My name is Mark Whitman. I'm 62 years old, and last spring, I opened a small bookstore with my retirement savings, only to have my younger brother report me for financial misconduct using the same inheritance he once begged me to protect. I didn't expect much fanfare. Honestly, I thought I'd just fade out quietly after 30 years in structural engineering, a career as dry as it sounds unless a bridge collapses. But when my youngest daughter Olivia graduated and moved out, and the house got too still, I knew I needed something to outlive me. Not money, not accolades, just meaning. That's when I remembered the box in my garage, my father's books. He died 5 years ago, and I was the one who cleaned out his den while Greg, my half-brother, was too busy arguing with probate attorneys about fair distribution. Dad left me no money, just a letter, yellowing in a manila envelope, folded with surgical precision like everything he ever did. It said, "In short, you understand legacy. Mark, Greg needs help, but don't let him drain you dry." That letter haunted me more than the zero in the will. I didn't resent Dad for it, not really. I'd spent a lifetime trying to earn his words, not his wealth. Greg got the vacation home, the antique truck, and a sizable brokerage account. I got instructions. That was our pattern. Growing up, Greg was the wild card. 8 years younger. From Dad's second marriage, our mom died when I was 11. Greg arrived in the household like a bomb wrapped in charm. He was funny, reckless, magnetic, and because Dad felt guilty for being older, sterner, tired the second time around, Greg got the leeway I never had. When Greg crashed a dirt bike at 15, I paid the hospital deductible. When he dropped out of college, I coached him through GED night school. When he relapsed on oxycodone in 2009, it was my name on the rehab center paperwork. Always quietly, always behind the scenes. I don't think I realized how much resentment had calcified inside me until the day I told Greg I was opening the store. "You," he laughed. "What the hell do you know about retail?" I shrugged. "Enough to hire someone smarter than me to run the till? I just want a place for people to think, for myself to breathe." He looked at me like I was delusional. With what money? My savings, and the annuity. He whistled. "So you're torching your nest egg for a dusty dream, Bold. Bro." It stung, but I didn't flinch. I'd already signed the lease on a corner unit off Cedar Street, in an old row of brick buildings next to a jazz cafe and a dry cleaner run by a war veteran who still called me sir. The bookstore would be called Second Chapters. I was 62, and I finally wanted to write my own. At first, things moved quietly. Olivia helped me set up the shelves, the community bulletin board, the reading nook with the secondhand armchairs. My accountant, Elsie Tran, a meticulous woman with a wry sense of humor, helped me with the LLC paperwork and the tax ID. Until one day, she called and said, "Mark, I need to ask where exactly did this $75,000 deposit originate?" I blinked. "That's the remainder of the brokerage Dad left Greg. He wired it to me, said he wanted to finally invest in something real." Elsie paused. "That account is still legally in Greg's name. Unless there's a formal transfer document, it could look like commingling or worse." I felt the floor drop. "Are you saying I could be audited?" "Worse," she said gently. "If Greg ever claimed coercion or incapacity, it could be considered misuse of inheritance funds." I hung up, stunned. That night, I called Greg. His voice was clipped. "Yeah, we need to clarify the paper trail on that transfer." "Elsie flagged it." He sighed. "Unbelievable. I try to help you, and now you're worried about paperwork." "No, I'm trying to protect both of us." "Sure, Mark, you're always the hero. Dad's precious fixer." His voice hardened. "You want formal fine. Maybe I should call my lawyer and explain how you guilted me into it." That was the first time I heard it, the veiled threat. And that was the moment I realized something had shifted. Not just between us, but in the balance of loyalty, history, and consequence. Greg had always been reckless, but he'd never been cruel. Until now. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the local business licensing board. An anonymous complaint had been filed alleging misuse of family funds. The letter was stamped with urgency. I sat at my kitchen table holding it in trembling hands. And for the first time in 6 decades, I asked myself, what if doing the right thing finally ruins me? The envelope from the licensing board sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I couldn't bring myself to open it again, though I'd memorized every word of the letter. An anonymous complaint has been filed regarding potential financial impropriety in the funding of your business. Second chapters. Please provide all supporting documentation within 10 business days or risk forfeiture of business registration and further review. It didn't say fraud, but it didn't have to. I kept replaying the phone call with Greg, trying to pinpoint when his voice shifted from irritation to intention. Had he always been waiting for an opportunity to leverage guilt into control? Or had I handed him that power long ago quietly, with every small concession and unquestioned loan? Elsie, ever the pragmatist, scheduled an emergency meeting the following Monday. Her office smelled like lemon cleaner and printer ink, and her desk was perfectly aligned, each pen parallel, each paper clipped precisely. She was the kind of person who built order from chaos. I needed that. I've drafted a preliminary response, she said, sliding a folder across to me. It outlines the timeline of deposits and characterizes the $75,000 as a good faith loan unless proven otherwise. But it wasn't a loan, I said slowly. Her eyes met mine. Then we have a problem. Silence settled between us. I trusted him, I muttered, more to myself than her. She didn't respond, just tapped a pen against her legal pad. I'm going to refer you to Marcia Lewin, a probate attorney with experience in intra-family disputes. We need to anticipate how this might spiral. Spiral? That word stuck to my ribs. I'd envisioned conflict. Sure, Greg had never been easy, but this wasn't just a sibling spat over money. This was the slow public erosion of my credibility. At an age when rebuilding from ashes wasn't just difficult, it was humiliating. Olivia called that night from Seattle. She was working late at the oncology center. Her voice hushed but steady. You sound tired. Dad, everything okay? I wanted to lie. To protect her. The way I'd always protected everyone. But I didn't. There's been a complaint, I said, about the bookstore funding. Greg might have filed it. Long pause. Then that's beyond petty. I know. I thought he said he wanted you to do this. He called it finally growing a spine. Remember? I guess he preferred me spineless. She exhaled. Do you want me to come home for a few days? No. Just knowing you're out there doing good work, that's enough. And I meant it. Olivia was the first Whitman to choose healing as a career. Her life had its own gravity now. I wouldn't pull her into mine. 2 days later, I met with Marcia, the probate attorney. She had steel gray hair and wore a blazer the color of dried blood, intimidating, but not unkind. Your brother's lawyer sent an affidavit, she said, opening a file. They're claiming diminished capacity on Greg's part at the time of transfer. Mild cognitive impairment due to substance use and untreated depression. I blinked. He's functional. He drives. He plays poker every Thursday. He manages Dad's old property in Napa. She raised an eyebrow. Do you have evidence of that? No, I admitted. But come on. She looked at me the way a surgeon might look at a stubborn patient ignoring symptoms. Mark, truth and proof are not the same thing. I leaned back, stunned. That night, I went to the bookstore. The lights were still on inside the warm golden glow I loved. I unlocked the door and stepped in, letting the creak of the wooden floorboards ground me, the smell of paper and cedar oil, the poetry shelf Olivia curated, the handwritten note from a retired English teacher who said it reminded her of Paris in '68. This place wasn't just a business, it was my first act of self-definition in decades. I walked to the back room and opened the ledger. Every receipt, every wire transfer, every invoice from the mahogany shelves to the espresso machine Greg said was a waste of space. I photocopied everything. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to our old house, the one Dad lived in until the final stroke, the one Greg insisted we flip for equity before I talked him into keeping it as a rental. The lights were on. His truck was in the driveway. I rang the doorbell. Greg opened the door shirtless, beer in hand, hair a mess. Behind him, a rerun of Shark Tank blared. Well, look who found his backbone. He said, I want to talk. Talk or lecture. I'm not here to fight. He sighed theatrically but stepped aside. I sat at the same kitchen table where we'd once played Monopoly while Dad read the paper. You filed a complaint. Nope, he said. My lawyer did after I told him what you pulled. What I pulled, Greg, you offered. Under pressure, he cut in. Emotional coercion. You guilted me into giving you the only thing Dad left. My hands curled into fists. He left you the bulk of everything. He left me responsibility. That's been the pattern since '82. Greg's face twisted. You think you're better than me because you swallowed your dreams and called it virtue? I stood up. No, because I built something out of silence. While you threw tantrums in public, you're not dad, he spat. Stop trying to rewrite the script. I didn't reply, just walked out. That was the moment I understood Greg didn't want money. He wanted the narrative. He couldn't stand that. For once, the story wasn't about his mess, but my becoming. Back at the bookstore, I stood beneath the sign second chapters. That night, I decided I would not go down quietly. If Greg wanted a war of paperwork, fine, but he'd have to fight someone who finally saw his pattern and refused to play along. 3 days after that kitchen confrontation, I received a formal request for financial disclosure from the state mediator's office. The letter bore Greg's lawyer's name in bold. It was no longer a family disagreement, it was a legal proceeding. I sat in the back office of the bookstore, the one with the squeaky radiator and faded high school debate trophies still boxed from when Olivia won regionals in '09. Around me, the chaos of receipts and binders spread like the battlefield it had become. Marcia was blunt over the phone. This isn't about proving innocence. This is about establishing boundaries of perception. We'll comply and we'll escalate, but you need to prepare yourself. For what? Her voice didn't waver. A character assassination. I closed my eyes. Somewhere inside me, the old instinct to step aside, to keep peace flared, but it died quickly. I had lived too long absorbing impact for others. Now I was bracing for it. That night, I pulled down a box from the top shelf in my closet. Not the one with Olivia's drawings or my late wife's letters. This one was older, dustier. My father's journals. He'd kept meticulous records ledgers, maintenance logs, even letters to himself. Most were dull. Engine notes, corn yield forecasts. But tucked between 2 pages was a loose sheet of yellow paper, his handwriting sharp and slanted. If you're reading this, Mark, then something's been challenged. Maybe your integrity. Maybe your motives. Either way, you have my trust. I gave Greg the house, the accounts, the appearance of favor. But you I counted on. Not because I loved him less, but because I knew he'd need insulation and you'd provide it. That's not fair. But it is truth. The paper trembled in my hands. Not from age, but from the years I'd waited for those words too late now to hear them aloud. I showed the note to Marcia the next day. She nodded solemnly. It won't hold legal weight, but it will hold narrative weight. And that's what we'll need in mediation. The bookstore stayed open during all this, thanks to Anna, the 27-year-old manager I'd hired, a former lit major with tattoos of classic first lines on her forearm. She was sharp, unbothered, and quietly loyal. One afternoon, while I was in the back sorting receipts, she poked her head in. "You've got a visitor. Tell them I'm not. It's Reverend Thompson." I froze. Thompson was the longtime pastor of First Presbyterian, the same church Dad took us to during the years after Mom died. He officiated Olivia's baptism. He buried my father. He walked in slowly, cane in hand, a kind smile on his face. "Mark, I won't stay long. I just heard about the situation." I exhaled. Word travels fast. He chuckled. "Especially when the aggrieved party's lawyer is a tithing member." I gestured toward the reading nook. He sat with surprising grace. "I remember when your father brought Greg to Sunday school. He said, told me the boy was mercurial, like quicksilver burns hot, shines bright, but hard to hold." I said nothing. Thompson leaned forward. "Greg came to see me last week, claimed you coerced him, said you manipulated the inheritance for personal gain." I tensed. "And what do you think?" He looked at me, old eyes steady. "I think Greg is still mourning a kind of childhood he never had, and I think you're finally mourning the kind of father you never had, either." That hit harder than I expected. He continued, softer now. "I'm not here to take sides. I'm here to say your story deserves telling. Don't let shame silence your version." He placed a folded bulletin on the table and left. Inside was a quote from Micah. "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly?" For once, justice and mercy felt like they were at odds. The mediation date was set for the following Thursday. Olivia flew in without telling me, walked through the door with her suitcase and her calm, clinical presence. "I took 2 days," she said. "I wanted to be here." I didn't cry, but I came close. The night before mediation, we sat on the bookstore floor, eating leftover Thai and talking through Greg's likely plays. "He's going to say you manipulated him," she said. "He'll say I preyed on his addiction. He might even bring up Mom." "Nah, that stopped me." "He always blamed you for her leaving," she said quietly. "Even though it happened years before he was born." I looked down. I didn't know he still People carry myths, she said, even broken ones. Especially broken ones. The next day, we sat across a polished walnut table in a law office overlooking downtown. Greg wore a gray suit that didn't quite fit, his lawyer stiff beside him. I brought Elsie and Marcia. Olivia sat behind me silent, steady. Greg started with tears, crocodile ones, maybe, but they worked. I felt pressured, he said. Mark's always had this moral high ground, it's suffocating. Marcia countered with timelines, bank transfers, and the journal excerpt. But it was Olivia who turned the room. When Greg accused me of exploiting his fragile state, she stood up. My father supported you through 3 relapses. He paid your rehab bills. He covered Dad's mortgage when you defaulted. He even bailed you out when you got arrested in '98. Greg went pale. She continued, this isn't about fraud. It's about finally being asked to take accountability. Silence. Then, for the first time in 30 years, Greg looked at me and said, you've always wanted me to fail. And for the first time, I said back, no, I just stopped lying for you. The fallout came slower than I expected. No explosion, just a shifting of weight, a quiet erosion of how people looked at me and at Greg. The official outcome of mediation. No legal charges filed, no money owed. The judge had ruled the inheritance division lawful, but emotionally, spiritually, the landscape had been altered. The first blow came from the Rotary Club. I'd been a member for nearly 20 years, chaired 2 literacy campaigns, ran the scholarship auction each fall. When I walked into the March meeting 3 days after mediation, I noticed the silence first. People nodded, but it was the kind of nod you give a man at a funeral. Respectful, awkward. After the meeting, Gary from insurance pulled me aside. He was kind, but his words landed like wet gravel. Some folks are wondering, he said, if it's true you used your dad's account to fund the store. I didn't, I said plainly. Just saying it's out there. I smiled tightly. So is the truth. At home that night, I found Olivia poring over the deed to the bookstore. You need to think about succession, she said. Already, I asked. Dad, you're 62, the building's in your name. You need a plan, especially if Greg escalates. I sighed. You always did read 2 chapters ahead. She grinned. You raised me that way. Later that week, Anna, my store manager, handed me a stack of hate mail. Most were unsigned. One was from an anonymous concerned citizen who claimed I'd defrauded a grieving sibling. I tossed it, but Anna picked it back up. Don't ignore this, she said. It's not just about you. It's about the store. The brand. That word made me pause. Brand. Yeah. You're not just a guy with a dream anymore. You're the founder of Second Chapters. People come here not just for books, but for what it stands for. I looked around. The poetry section Olivia had curated. The reading lamp that once belonged to my mother. The portrait of my father restored and hung above the counter, a quiet act of reclamation. But Anna was right. This place had become more than memory. It was narrative. I called Reverend Thompson the next morning. He met me at the shop and listened while I vented. The gossip, the letters, the shifting alliances. Then he said something that caught me off guard. You know, Greg came to see me again. Oh, he confessed. Not guilt, resentment. Said he felt humiliated. I scoffed. He humiliated himself. He also said something else. Thompson continued. He said, Mark never needed to win. That's why he's so dangerous. I froze. Because it was true. I had never wanted to win. Just to survive with some dignity. To honor my father without becoming him. To love my daughter without making her a martyr to family myth. And maybe, yes, maybe that was threatening. 2 days later, I got a call from Sylvia, my father's second wife. Greg's mother. We hadn't spoken in almost a decade. I'm calling about the land, she said. What land? The plot by Mill Ridge. Your father bought it in '94, said it was for something quiet and personal. It's in your name now. My heart skipped. Why now? She hesitated. Because I'm dying, Mark. Stage 4. And I want to set things straight. I drove out to see her the next morning. She looked small in the hospital bed, but her eyes were clear. You need to know, she said. The trust wasn't just financial, it was spiritual. Your father wanted you to build something. Greg he loved, but you he respected. I said nothing. There's a letter in the drawer, she added. It's yours. The letter was brief, my father's handwriting again. This land is for your next chapter. If you choose to write it, you've lived in service. Live now in design. Let this place hold no secrets. I stood in the hospital parking lot, letter in hand, breathing cold spring air, the kind that carries both thaw and ache. That night, I told Olivia about the land. She nodded, quiet. "Do you think he loved me?" I asked. "I think he trusted you," she said. And at his age, that may have been the highest form of love he had left. We both went silent. The next morning, Greg showed up at the store. I nearly told Anna to call security, but something in his posture stopped me. He looked tired. Not performative tired. Hollow. He asked if we could talk. I said yes. He sat in the reading nook, the same one where Olivia once practiced college interviews. He didn't apologize, not exactly, but he said something better. "I think I've spent most of my life trying to make people think I was owed something." I waited. "And maybe I am, but not from you." We sat in silence. He looked around. "You made something here? I thought you were trying to replace him, but you were trying to heal." That word, heal, it cracked something in me. He stood up. "I'm leaving town," he said. "Taking a job in Idaho, clean slate." I nodded. "That sounds right." He lingered. "Do you want the last word?" "No," I said. "I want the last piece." He left without another word. I walked back to the desk and looked at my father's portrait. The light hit it just right that day, casting a faint reflection of the window behind me. I thought maybe legacy isn't what we leave behind. Maybe it's what we choose not to carry forward. The Mill Ridge plot wasn't much to look at. Just under 2 acres of untamed land, pressed up against the outermost curve of our quiet town. Overgrown grass, a rusted fence, and a single stone marker bearing the initials RMW. My father, it took me 3 visits before I could step onto the property without feeling like I was trespassing on grief. The locals had forgotten about it, or perhaps never knew it existed. Even the county clerk needed 20 minutes to dig up the file. But the deed was clean. No liens, no caveats, just my name, handwritten in a script that matched the letter he left. "Let this place hold no secrets." I couldn't stop repeating that phrase. What did he mean? What secrets? I asked Olivia one morning over coffee. "Secrets are a form of currency in this family," she said. "He probably meant not to hoard them the way he did." She was probably right, but I couldn't shake the feeling there was something more. I considered selling the land. Anna connected me with a real estate broker who brought me 3 offers within a week, all developers, all with plans for luxury condos. One of them even said, "We'll call the complex Willow Legacy. Sentimental sells." I nearly laughed, nearly. Instead, I told him I'd think about it. But I didn't need time. I knew I couldn't sell it. What I needed was conviction. It came in the form of Lorraine. She was a retired librarian, 73, and ran the town's historical society out of a rented room above the VFW. She came into the bookstore with a newspaper clipping. Yellowed, fragile. "I think this belongs to you," she said. Placing it on the counter, it was a photo of my father. In 1963, breaking ground on a community garden. The caption read, "Reading Roots local teacher turns farmland into future." "He had big plans once," she said softly. I nodded. "He lost them somewhere along the way." She met my eyes. "Then maybe it's your job to finish what he started." That night I dreamed of the land. Not just grass and trees, but rows of benches, a circle of stones, children reading under a pergola. The next morning, I called Olivia. "I want to turn Mill Ridge into something," I said. "Like what?" "A learning sanctuary, a community space, something that grows." She didn't laugh. Instead, she said, "You'll need permits, zoning variances, and a hell of a pitch." I grinned. "That's why I'm calling you." Within a week, we had a plan. We called it the Legacy Grove, a hybrid space for public storytelling, adult literacy programs, and intergenerational workshops. Nature meets narrative. Simple, honest. We even reached out to Sylvia's care facility to ask if some of her art therapy students could help design the mural walls. The initial response from the town council was lukewarm. No one outright opposed it, but no one stepped up either. Until Miss Carradine, a 68-year-old war widow and former city clerk. She'd spent decades battling for green space preservation. She showed up to the first public hearing, silver cane in hand, and said, "My husband taught Mark's English class in 1977, said he was the only boy who ever asked for more homework. If anyone's earned this land, it's him." People applauded. I didn't cry, but I wanted to. As we moved into the planning stages, Greg called. "From Idaho. Mom told me what you're doing," he said. "Did she approve?" "She said you're either a fool or a saint." That tracks. I'm neither, I added. There was silence. Then Greg said something I hadn't expected. I think you should name it after her. Sylvia. Yeah, she stayed with Dad through the ugliest years, and she always believed in second chances. I mulled it over, then said, how about this one mural is hers, the other is yours? He didn't respond right away. Then do what you want. But thanks. Over the following weeks, construction began. Local volunteers cleared brush. Olivia handled the paperwork. Anna hosted donation nights at the bookstore, open mic poetry, storytelling circles, even a jazz trio one Friday night that drew over 50 people. The bookstore's income dipped. I started dipping into savings. And that's when the real pressure hit. My accountant, Dave, a practical man with a lopsided mustache, gave it to me straight. If you keep this up, Mark, you'll blow through your retirement cushion. I'm aware. You're not 25. I'm aware of that too. He sighed. You're not obligated to save this town's soul. No, I said, just mine. Dave didn't understand, not fully, but he respected it. Still, the stress mounted. At night, I'd sit in the unfinished garden and ask myself if I was building something real or just running from regret. And then one Saturday afternoon, everything cracked open. We were painting the community wall when a young boy, maybe 10, wandered in. Alone. Quiet. He watched Olivia lay down the stencils for the quote wall. He pointed to one, the stories we bury grow roots in silence. Unknown. That's from my mom. He said. Olivia looked at him. Your mom's a poet. Kind of. She writes in her notebook when she's sad. I asked for his name. He said, Kenny. We live in the shelter 2 streets over. I nodded. You're welcome here anytime. He returned the next day, and the day after. Soon, he brought friends. By the end of the month, we had a wait list for storytelling night. The town began to shift. Not loudly, not all at once, but like a door finally unjamming. A retired judge offered to host conflict resolution classes for teens. Lorraine donated archival photos for the heritage wall. And one night, Ms. Carradine brought a tin box filled with her late husband's lesson plans. This belongs here, she said. I didn't answer. I just placed it beside the poetry tree. Story 2. My name's Nathan Reyes. 29, youngest of 3. Lifelong reliable backup plan. 4 months ago, a drunk driver turned my spine and confidence into shrapnel. 3 surgeries later, I came home to the apartment above our family restaurant Reyes & Sons. The taco place that smells like sweat, lime, and my father's pride. Dad opened the doors in 1989 with a second-hand grill and a loan shark smile. When Mom passed, he handed me the bookkeeping so he could keep flipping carnitas. My sister Bianca, 33, called herself front-of-house director. Translation, she waved, took selfies with influencers, and left before mop time. Her fiancé, Kyle Mercer, ex-college quarterback, current real estate seminar junkie, started helping while I was in the hospital. He wore designer aprons and talked about scaling revenues, but I never saw him wash a single plate. I came home in a back brace and foggy painkiller haze. Bianca poured me herbal tea, told me not to worry about payroll, said she'd already found streamlined solution. She smelled like expensive perfume and someone else's credit card. I believed her for exactly 11 days. The night, everything shifted. Dad and Mom's old house shares a paper-thin wall with the restaurant office. A Tuesday, close to midnight, I hobbled downstairs for water. Lights were on in the office, doors half closed. I heard Bianca's laugh too sharp, like glass under a tire. He'll sign anything if you call it temporary, Bianca said. Kyle's voice followed, lazy and smug. Power of attorney, sweetheart. Once that's in your purse, the SBA loan is ours. After we franchise and flip, we dump the debt on him. Easy. Silence. My heart pounded so hard the incision on my back throbbed. She was talking about me. I gripped the doorframe until splinters bit my palms. Dad was asleep 2 rooms away, breathing through a worn-out inhaler, trusting the kids he raised to guard the thing he bled for. Bianca kept going. Nathan's still high on oxy. He'll scribble his signature just to stop the questions. We keep him as mascot till the investors wire the cash. Then, well, accidents happen, right? Kyle chuckled deep, satisfied, unafraid. I didn't push the door in, didn't scream or stagger or even breathe. I backed into the hallway, every nerve on fire, and realized the brace wasn't the heaviest weight on my body anymore. 48 hours of pretend. I spent the next 2 days rehearsing weakness. I let Bianca feed me soup and lies. I let Kyle slap my shoulder like a coach patting injured talent. Inside, gears spun. First call, Maya Singh, my childhood friend turned corporate attorney. Second call, Rosa Delgado, Dad's oldest supplier, whose invoices proved the restaurant still made money without any franchise miracle. Third call, the bank, freezing every account that required my name. I signed nothing. I smiled a lot. I told Bianca I was grateful. She scheduled a notary for Friday. Friday showtime. Morning light poured through cracked blinds while I sat at Dad's kitchen table. The brace dug into my ribs. The pain kept me sharp. Bianca breezed in wearing white blazer, red lipstick, zero conscience. Kyle's printing the documents. She sang, kissing Dad's cheek. He looked confused. He trusted her. That knifed me harder than the stitches. When the notary arrived, a bored guy named Trevor, I offered coffee. While it brewed, Maya stepped out of the hallway, heels clicking like a gavel. "Hi, I'm Mr. Reyes' legal counsel," she said, waving an envelope thick with papers. Trevor blinked. Bianca's smile collapsed. Kyle smelled danger slower. He still tried a handshake. Maya laid out a revocation of all prior powers, a cease and desist on unauthorized loans, and a temporary restraining order covering the business premises. Dad's eyes widened, then watered. He looked at me. I just nodded once. Kyle puffed his chest. "This is family business." Maya didn't flinch. "Exactly. And my client is done being your prey." Bianca's voice went shrill. "Nathan, you're confused post-trauma delirium." I cut her off. "Delirium doesn't record audio." I pulled my phone from my pocket, pressed play. Her midnight confession filled the room. Trevor's jaw dropped, Dad's face drained of color. When the recording ended, the only sound was the coffee machine sputtering. "Sign here," Maya told Trevor, pointing to her paperwork. He signed, shaking. Bianca stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. She saw the brother who fixed her parking tickets, not the man who learned to walk again just to kick her out. Fallout in real time. Kyle tried to bargain. Mentioning investors waiting at brunch, Maya informed him that using falsified authority to secure loans was bank fraud, 5 to 20 years. His tan faded to hospital green. Dad finally spoke, voice rough with disappointment. "Leave the keys on the counter, mija." The single word mija landed like a funeral bell. Bianca's eyes filled, but no tears fell. She placed the keys down, one by one, as if they burned. They left without slamming doors. Real predators don't waste energy on noise. Quiet after the storm. Dad sat, shoulders sagging. "I raised you kids to share," he whispered. I clenched my cane. "You raised us to trust. That's different." He nodded, ashamed but grateful. That night I walked the empty dining room, lights off, listening to the hum of refrigerators, the heartbeat Bianca tried to steal. Every step hurt, but pain meant nerves were alive. So was the business. So was I. Tomorrow I'd call staff, explain new protocols, maybe even laugh again. But first I allowed myself one raw minute at table 7, head in hands, letting betrayal drain out like dirty dishwater. When I straightened, the mirror on the bar showed a thinner, harder Nathan, eyes steady, back straighter than the doctor predicted. I wasn't healed. I was forged. And that was only the beginning. One week of false sunshine. Dad insisted on opening the restaurant the next morning. He limped to the grill, flipped tortillas, pretended the world was normal. Regulars noticed the bruise of sadness on his face, but they still ordered extra salsa. Money trickled in, hope trickled faster. Each night I locked the doors, filed invoices, and backed up accounts to 3 clouds. Maya called daily. She said silence from Bianca meant plotting, not surrender. I believed her. But part of me wanted the quiet to last just one more dawn. It didn't. 2. Digital daggers. Monday, 7 a.m. My phone vibrated like a trapped hornet. #boycott. Reyes was trending in the city's foodie group. A slick video showed roaches in our pantry, clearly stock footage from who knows where. Commenters roasted us alive before breakfast. 10 minutes later, the health department scheduled a surprise inspection. Dad's hands shook as he wiped counters that were already spotless. I brought out every sanitation log since 2017. Inspectors found nothing. But rumors never need evidence. Lunch revenue dropped 40%. I knew Bianca's signature loud, flashy, fact-free. I also knew how to answer. 3. Community armor. That night I posted a live kitchen tour, no filters, no edits, just sizzling carne. I invited customers to stand behind the prep line anytime, no reservation required. Word spread faster than Bianca's lies. The next day a local vlogger streamed himself eating our tacos, shouting, "If this is dirty, I want to roll in it." Sales rebounded, but my pulse stayed high. Kyle called from a blocked number. "Nate, man, you gotta admit the drama's good for clicks." I hung up before the poison could seep deeper. 4. Sabotage in the supply chain. Wednesday. Deliveries failed to appear. I phoned Rosa. She said she'd received an email, my email canceling every standing order. I forwarded her the spoof address Bianca had used. Rosa cursed in Spanish, doubled our next shipment, and promised to warn other suppliers. Still, the fridge shelves gaped like broken teeth. Dinner service almost collapsed. I sent staff home early, stayed scrubbing pans alone, the smell of bleach mixed with fear. Outside, rain hammered garbage lids. Inside, my brace creaked every time I lifted a pot. Healing felt like betrayal. My body wanted rest. My family wanted war. 5. The Dad Gambit. Friday afternoon, Bianca texted Dad from a new number. "Coffee at La Palma. Just us. I miss my father." He showed me the screen. Eyes torn. I said nothing. Let him decide. Control is a dignity he rarely gets now. He went, wearing his oldest jacket and a tentative smile. He didn't come back by closing time. Panic clawed my throat. I phoned. No answer. Finally, Kyle's voice message arrived. Slurring. "Old man's had too much. He's with friends. Chill." I tracked Dad's phone to an abandoned strip mall 15 miles out. Maya drove. My brace hated every pothole. We found him in a darkened office suite. Lights off, single bulb over a folding table, Bianca perched on one side, pen in hand, contract on cheap clipboard. Dad sat opposite, half asleep, wrists limp, signature half-formed. Maya hit record on her phone and stepped into the light. "Coercion is still a felony," she said. Bianca's face hardened from daughter to defendant. She tried to snatch the clipboard. Maya grabbed it first. Kyle lunged. My cane cracked his shin. He yelped and folded fast, fewer touchdowns in real life. We escorted Dad out while sirens approached in the distance. Maya's anonymous tip had timed perfectly. 6. Courtroom in a parking lot. Police questioned Kyle on forged documents tied to his loan scam. He broke like wet drywall, naming Bianca as mastermind before the cruiser door even shut. She screamed at him, a wild, feral sound, then locked eyes with me through the red-blue strobe. No tears, only promise of further ruin. She posted bail before dawn. Of course, dirty money still spends. Kyle stayed behind, bargaining for leniency. By breakfast, he had emailed Maya every incriminating spreadsheet. 7. The brief calm. Saturday morning, the restaurant smelled like victory and chorizo. Staff high-fived Dad, who shuffled between tables accepting hugs he thought he didn't deserve. I watched the door, half expecting Bianca to burst in with a flamethrower. Instead, a courier delivered a single envelope. Inside, a copy of Kyle's full confession, stamped by the district attorney, and a sticky note in Maya's handwriting. "Checkmate. Not yet. Guard your king." I placed the confession in the safe, double-locked the office, and wondered what piece Bianca had left to move. 8. Midnight Orange. Sunday. 2 a.m. I stayed late doing inventory paranoia. My new hobby. The street out front was empty except for an alley cat and distant siren. I switched off the main lights, kept the prep room lamp glowing. A chemical scent slithered in through the ventilation grate, not bleach, something harsher. Then I heard the softest hiss, like soda opening. I limped outside. Behind the dumpster sat a red gas can, cap off, sloshing. My stomach fell through the pavement. A figure in a gray hoodie emerged from shadow, lighter flicking. Even in low light, I knew Bianca's posture and older sister's stance, etched in childhood memories of hide and seek. "Nate," she whispered, voice shaky. "Last chance. Walk away. Give me the company. And we end this." Heartbeats roared in my ears. "You'll burn Dad's life work?" I asked, disbelief and sorrow mixing. She shrugged. "Ashes are easier to divide." My phone was already recording behind my thigh. Sirens approached. The city never sleeps, and the fire station sat 2 blocks south. I didn't need them yet. I needed her words. She stepped closer, lighter snapping open, blue flame teasing gasoline vapor. Her eyes glinted panic and determination. "I'm not losing to you," she said. Tears finally spilling. I was supposed to be the star. I saw a little girl in pigtails, winning spelling bees no one remembered. I saw a teenager practicing prom speeches in bathroom mirrors. I saw a woman who had turned hunger for praise into full-time arson. And I still said, "Please don't." Wind shifted. Flame flickered near spilled fuel. For one awful second, future headlines flashed: family tragedy, restaurant inferno, 2 dead. Footsteps thundered behind me. Officer Delgado, beat cop turned regular customer. He'd seen my silent SOS text. His flashlight beam pinned Bianca. She froze. Lighter mid-flick. The moment stretched. Thin as sugar glass. Delgado spoke softly. "Ma'am, drop it. Walk away with your life. This isn't winning." Bianca's shoulders sagged. She let the lighter fall, clink on wet asphalt. Gasoline reflected the street lamp like a shattered mirror. She looked at me. Hollow. "You took everything," she whispered. I shook my head. "I saved what you threw away." Handcuffs clicked. Rain began, washing fumes into gutters. Flashing blue lights turned puddles into strobe pools. Delgado guided her into the cruiser. She didn't fight. She didn't speak. She just stared through the window at the building she almost erased. 9. Embers that didn't ignite. I spent the rest of the night airing out the kitchen, heart hammering. Dad arrived at dawn, saw police tape, saw my shaking hands, and hugged me so tight my brace creaked. Neither of us cried. The steam from early coffee hid enough moisture. By noon, customers formed a line down the block, community choosing tortillas over gossip. Maya arrived with fresh court papers, restraining orders upgraded. Insurance adjusters informed, evidence bagged. Bianca would face charges: attempted arson, attempted fraud, conspiracy. Kyle had already flipped. Her plea deal looked bleak. But legal battles are slow, healing slower. The grill kept sizzling. Staff sang off-key to old rancheras. Dad laughed for the first time in months. I exhaled a breath I felt I'd been holding since the accident. The war wasn't over, but the front lines had moved. We were no longer defending a crumbling wall. We were rebuilding it, brick by stubborn brick. Cliffhanger. That night, as I locked the safe, I found a letter addressed to me in Bianca's handwriting, postmarked 2 days before her arrest. Inside was a single sentence: "If I can't have Dad's empire, I'll take Mom's secret." Mom has been dead 5 years. What secret? Why mail it before the gasoline? My hands shook worse than during surgery. I read the line again, and a memory surfaced: a shoebox Mom once hid behind flour sacks. Smell of old paper. Faded ink. I hadn't opened that box since the funeral. I grabbed my keys, heart pounding, and headed for the attic. 1. Dust and paper cuts. The attic smelled like cedar, mothballs, and grief gone stale. Rain drummed the roof while my phone flashlight carved tunnels through cobwebs. Mom's old baking tins, broken Christmas lights, a suitcase full of vinyl, then the battered shoebox, lid taped twice, my name scribbled in Mom's looping cursive. Inside, a Polaroid of Mom cradling a newborn, timestamped June 17, 1996. A hospital bracelet labeled Baby Boy Torres, Mom's maiden name, not Reyes. A crumpled letter: "Forgive me, Mateo. Tell Nathan when he's strong enough." A notarized adoption form transferring custody from Mateo Diaz to Marisol Torres Reyes and Noel Reyes, Dad's full name. My pulse roared. I was the adoption. Bianca and I still shared Mom, but Dad wasn't my biological father. The photograph proved Bianca had held me as a toddler. Clueless or complicit, I sank onto a dusty trunk, breathing in shards. Mom had kept this quiet 29 years. Bianca mailed that single threat before she tried to burn the restaurant, meaning she planned to nuke my identity in court if arson failed. I snapped pictures of every document, then packed the originals in a waterproof folder. Truth is safest in light. 2. Dad's quiet. Earthquake. He was chopping onions for lunch rush when I laid the folder on the counter. His knife stopped mid-slice. Steam from the griddle fogged his glasses. I told him softly, "She wanted you to explain someday. Someday is now." He sat, shoulders folded in on themselves, voice low. Your mother saved a neighbor's baby from the foster system. Mateo was 17, no job, no papers. She convinced him I could give you more. We filed private adoption, promised secrecy so Mateo wouldn't be deported. Tears welled, but he kept talking. I wanted to tell you after college, then the car crash, then her cancer. I kept waiting for a painless moment. They don't exist. I managed a shaky laugh. So technically I'm not Reyes by blood. Dad squeezed my hand. Blood built the restaurant. Love kept it open. For one breath, the kitchen was still just two men mourning and mending at once. Then the lunch bell rang. Reality barged in, and we cooked like always. 3. Bianca's new blade. A sheriff's deputy served papers at 3 p.m. Petition to suspend ownership, pending paternity clarification. Filed by Bianca Reyes Mercer. Leveraging state inheritance statute. If a successor's blood relation is disproven, distribution is contested. The petition froze business bank accounts until a hearing. Rent was due in 6 days, payroll in 4. Bianca had traded gasoline for red tape. Maya read the filing. Jaw tight. She's arguing you were never a legal heir, ignoring the adoption. I showed her the documents. She exhaled relief but not victory. Adoption papers trump blood, but we need certified originals, not attic relics. They were in a safety deposit box Mom opened the week she died. I remembered the key, tiny bronze, taped under her recipe binder. I'd flipped that binder 1,000 times and never asked why it rattled. 4. Clock run. Maya and I hit the bank at 9 a.m. Sharp Monday. A polite manager escorted us to a vault that smelled of steel and stale air. Inside box 1470 lay the certified adoption packet, pristine. Mom's diary, last entry dated 1 week before her passing. A sealed envelope addressed to Bianca when she can listen. Maya copied the adoption, filed it with the clerk before noon. The injunction remained, but the judge scheduled an emergency review for Thursday. 72 hours of financial chokehold. I spent them on survival mode, cash-only sales, IOUs to staff, free tacos to suppliers for patients, and nightly pep talks that tasted like burnt espresso. 5. Kyle's curveball. Wednesday. 10 p.m. Kyle called from county jail. He'd heard about Bianca's paternity gambit. She's losing it. Man, she wants Mateo, that biological dad, to testify. Says he'll claim the adoption's fraudulent. My muscles iced. I barely remembered Mateo just a kind-eyed stranger at my 5th birthday. If Bianca dangled lawyer fees, he might sign anything. Kyle whispered, she's wiring a retainer tomorrow from a crypto wallet. I'll trade the wallet address for leniency. Maya negotiated. Kyle emailed every plan Bianca had scribbled on jail stationery crypto receipts, witness lists, fake affidavits. He bought himself a shorter sentence. We bought preemptive ammo. 6. Letters from the dead. That night, alone, I opened Mom's diary. Last entry. Bianca's ambition scares me. I see Noel aging, Nathan healing, and Bianca sprinting toward applause I can't hear. If she ever forgets who she is, this restaurant must remind her through the brother who always forgives. Forgive my ribs ached at the word, but the sealed envelope for Bianca burned a hole in my pocket. Truth could free or finish her. I wasn't sure which I wanted. Sleep didn't come. Dawn found me watching the grill sizzle gray to pink. 7. Courtroom heat. Thursday's hearing unfolded in a wood-paneled shoebox. Bianca entered in designer beige. Wrists still bruised from cuffs, eyes fierce. Mateo shuffled behind her, hat in hand, regret clinging like cheap cologne. Judge Patel listened. Unimpressed by melodrama, Bianca's lawyer argued improper adoption, no biological claim. Maya introduced certified copies, timestamps, Mateo's original consent. Then she presented Kyle's letters proving witness tampering and crypto payments. Bianca's face drained fast. The judge dismissed her petition, restored our accounts, and set a fraud trial date. Court security escorted Bianca back to a holding cell for violating prior bail terms. As she passed, she hissed. "This isn't the last chapter," I muttered. "It's the last page you get to write." Mateo approached Dad and me outside. "I never meant harm," he said, voice small. Dad clasped his hand anyway. "Family is heavy, but grudges weigh more." 8. Aftershocks. Payroll cleared hours later. Staff cheered over horchata. Suppliers restocked shelves like nothing happened. Dad dozed in the office recliner, peace finally softening his brow. I brewed tea, opened Mom's envelope, needed to know what Bianca almost weaponized. My brilliant daughter. If you read this, you're hurt or angry or both. You chase bigger stages, but applause fades. What stays is the table you return to. Nathan isn't your rival. He is proof love is chosen daily. The restaurant is yours when you learn that. I believe you will. Mom. The words punched breath from my lungs. Mom hadn't disinherited Bianca. She'd left a path back, but Bianca couldn't see it through smoke of her own fires. I folded the letter, heart torn between rage and mercy. Forgiveness felt like a bridge over lava, possible, risky, maybe necessary. A 9, fire alarm. Again, time. Friday. A week since the gas can showdown. Smoke detectors screamed me awake in the apartment above the restaurant. Panic flash arson encore. I bolted downstairs. Kitchen clear, dining room haze thick as fog, but the smoke smelled electrical, not gasoline. The breaker panel in the back hall sparked. Flames licked drywall. Hungry. Sprinklers failed. Bianca's previous sabotage had corroded the valves. I yanked the fire extinguisher, foam choking air, but flames kept breeding. Called 911, dragged Dad from bed. Staff from their cots. Sirens neared, but heat swelled oppressive. A decade of family photos on the walls blistered. Our world, our history, sizzling toward ash despite every victory. We made it outside as windows blew, glass raining like lethal confetti. Neighbors held us as orange swallowed the night sky. Dad sobbed quiet, guttural. I tasted smoke and hopelessness. Firefighters battled for an hour. At sunrise, the building stood charred, gutted, but upright. Preliminary report, faulty wiring accelerated by deliberate sprinkler damage. Insurance would cover some, but reopening meant months, maybe a year. Bianca sat in county jail during the blaze. Yet her earlier sabotage lit the fuse. She'd still get charged with aggravated destruction. That didn't rebuild walls. Dad looked at smoldering beams and whispered, "Maybe this is the end." I gripped his shoulder, or the Renault Mom always wanted. My voice cracked with forced optimism neither of us bought. Across the street, dawn streaked pink over blackened brick. I remembered Mom's diary line, "The table you return to." What if the table was portable? What if Reyes and Sons could roll on 4 wheels until the roof rose again? An idea sparked, bright as neon, but so did dread permits, capital, manpower, and Bianca's trial loomed, guaranteeing more chaos. I exhaled smoke-tinged air, turned to Maya. "Ever structured a food truck LLC overnight?" She raised an eyebrow. "Ask me when the sun's fully up." Cliffhanger. A firefighter approached, holding a half-melted metal box pulled from the office safe. Inside, among warped coins and soot-blackened papers, lay Mom's original recipe notebook and a USB drive I'd never seen. The label read, "Project Luna, Confidential." Maya's eyes widened. That's the venture capital firm buying downtown lots. If Mom had a secret deal, it could fund the rebuild or bury us in deeper intrigue. I closed my fist around the drive, pulse quickening. Reyes and Sons wasn't dead yet, but the next move could crown or crush everything my family still had left. Story 3. My name is Michael. I'm 28 years old. And if you had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting across from my parents at a family dinner, being called cheap and greedy right before they kicked me out of the house, I would have laughed. But here we are. I work in finance. Nothing flashy, just enough to live comfortably and help out when needed. I've always been the quiet one in the family, the planner, the fixer, the one who made sure the lights stayed on while others played in the dark. And for most of my life, I thought that meant I was doing the right thing, the responsible thing. My younger sister, Natalie, is 25, loud, clever, impulsive, the kind of person who'd charm you into giving her your last dollar and then disappear when the check came. She was always the center of attention growing up, and our parents played right into it. Not abusive, not cruel, just emotionally selfish. Everything was about them, their problems, their wants, their image. If it didn't serve their narrative, it didn't exist. Except to my grandfather, Pop was different. He was my dad's dad, ex-military, proud to a fault, but fair. He didn't raise his voice unless it mattered. He didn't care for drama, but he could sniff out a lie before it hit the air. And unlike my parents, he respected boundaries, respected work, respected truth. So when my parents came to me last year asking for help, and by help, I mean $88,000, they framed it like an emergency. We just need it for a used car. Mom said, ours finally gave out. I hesitated. I wasn't rich, but I had savings. Still, it felt off. So I asked for a simple repayment plan. Mom actually laughed. Michael, we're your parents. After everything we've done for you, you want to nickel and dime us? It was the first time I felt that gut punch of betrayal, but I swallowed it. Told myself maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe they really needed help. So I wired the money. They didn't pay me back. Not even a thank you. And I didn't push, because that's what they count on. Your silence. A few months later, they asked for another $5,000. This time for essential repairs around the house. They swore they'd return it within a month. My dad even rested a hand on my shoulder. Come on, son. You know we wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I gave in, but a month passed. Then 2. Then my grandfather called me. Michael, he said, calm but firm. You know they just got back from Florida, right? I laughed. What? They used your money. Week-long vacation. Your dad bragged about it at the club. I didn't even argue. I called my parents, and Mom answered like nothing was wrong. Hey, sweetie, how's work? You went on vacation with my money, I asked. There was a pause, then a sigh. So Dad told you? No denial, no shame. You said it was for the house. It was, she said, we needed a break. We work hard too, Michael. My dad chimed in from the background, laughing. Figured you'd throw a fit. That's why we didn't tell you. That was it for me. I stopped calling, stopped visiting, went completely no contact. Until Pop texted me one day, Pop, dinner at your folks Saturday, your dad's promotion. You should come. I stared at the message. They hadn't even told me. Not that I cared, but why was Pop inviting me? Me, are you sure? Pop, just be there. So I went, not to make peace, but to end it. The house was loud when I arrived. Laughter, clinking glasses, Natalie's voice floating above the rest. It looked like something out of a commercial, but when I walked in, silence. My mother's face tightened for a split second before she plastered on a fake smile. Michael, what a surprise. My dad barely looked up, didn't expect you. Pop invited me. I said simply. I took my seat and waited. I didn't say a word during appetizers. I didn't flinch when they toasted Dad's promotion. I just sat there, biding my time. Then, when the main course hit the table, I leaned back and said loud enough for everyone to hear. Well, I guess paying me back won't be an issue now, huh? Forks stopped mid-air. My mother's wine glass tilted dangerously. My father froze. What are you talking about? He muttered. I smiled. You know, the $113,000 you borrowed and never repaid. I figured your new salary could cover that now. You greedy little, my father began. Pop cleared his throat. They'll pay you back. All eyes turned to him. My mother laughed nervously. Dad, come on, we're his parents. Pop didn't blink. And that makes it worse. Stealing from your own son. Pay him back or I change my will. The air dropped 20 degrees. That was their lifeline, their dream retirement, their ace in the hole. My mom paled. You don't mean that. I do, Pop said, and if you don't make it right, you're out. For one brief second, I thought that was it, that they'd finally feel the weight of their actions. But my dad rolled his eyes and said, fine, give it all to Michael, see if we care. That stung more than I expected. I stood up. Then I guess this is goodbye. Gladly, my mom snapped. Pop stood with me. Come on, I'll walk you out. I followed him to the porch, breathing the cool night air. My hands shook, but not from anger, from relief. They have no idea, I muttered. Pop smiled. Nope, but they'll learn soon enough. The morning after that disastrous family dinner, I woke up earlier than usual, not because I had to. Saturday was my only real day off, but because I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline from the night before was still humming in my veins. I had finally drawn a line. No more money. No more manipulation. No more guilt-wrapped demands disguised as family loyalty. I expected the silence. No texts, no calls. Not even from Natalie, who usually loved to stir the pot. I figured they were regrouping, trying to figure out how to paint me as the villain. But I didn't expect what happened next. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. Grandpa, come by this afternoon, we need to talk. My stomach dropped. Had something gone wrong? Were they threatening him now? I drove to his house with a dozen questions rattling around in my head, but when I pulled up to his driveway, I froze. There, parked right beside his aging Buick, was a silver Lexus SUV, the same one my parents bought with my money. I got out slowly, staring at it like it might disappear. Pop stepped outside, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Took you long enough," he said casually. "What? How?" He grinned, sipping his cup. "Let's just say your mother leaves the spare keys in predictable places, and she still thinks I'm old and harmless." I blinked. You took the car?" "Correction," he said. "I reclaimed your property." I burst out laughing. My 78-year-old grandfather had just pulled off the classiest heist I'd ever seen. "And what are you planning to do with it?" He tossed me the keys. "It's yours, Michael. You paid for it." I caught them mid-air, still stunned. "They're going to lose their minds." "Let them," he said with a shrug. "Maybe they'll start using the minds they're so proud of." That afternoon, the storm hit. First a missed call, then a voicemail from Mom that sounded like it was recorded mid-screaming match. Then a series of texts. "Mom, where is the car? Mom, Michael, answer me. Mom, this is theft." I replied simply. No, it's called reimbursement." 10 minutes later, my father called. I didn't answer. 30 minutes after that, I was sitting across from Pop in his living room when his landline rang. He answered it on speaker. "Dad!" My father's voice thundered. "Did you take our car?" Pop didn't even flinch. "I took Michael's car, the one you bought with his money." "You've lost it." "No," Pop said, "you lost your sense of shame." Then he hung up. I looked at him, wide-eyed. "You just started a war." Pop chuckled. "No, I just reminded them who they're dealing with." The next morning, I got another call, this time from a lawyer. At least, that's what the voicemail said. My parents were threatening legal action. I played the message for Pop. "Let them try," he said, folding his arms. But first, he opened a drawer and pulled out a thick file. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, even text message screenshots I had long forgotten about. "I've been documenting everything," he said, "just in case." I stared at him. "You planned for this." I hoped I wouldn't have to. "But Michael, you're not the only one they've used. I've seen them pull this kind of selfishness for decades." I swallowed hard. This wasn't just about me anymore. Pop leaned forward. "Here's the deal. Sell the car back to them. Make them pay you $6,000 flat. Not the full amount, but enough to cover your dignity. You think they'll go for it? They have no choice." He said, "They need that car, and they know what happens if they push me too far." By noon, I got the call. My father's voice was clipped, all teeth and no charm. "Fine, we'll pay." I want it in writing, I said, "and the check at the DMV?" That afternoon, I met him in person for the first time since the dinner. He looked tired, worn down in a way I hadn't seen before. Maybe Pop's threat of changing the will had landed harder than I thought. He signed the paperwork in silence. When he handed me the check, he didn't look me in the eye. "Mom stayed in the car the entire time. Cowardice, I guess, comes in designer sunglasses." I deposited the check and drove back to Pop's house. "Here," I said, handing him an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "Your commission." Inside was $1,000 in cash. Pop laughed. "You don't have to pay me." "I know," I said, "but I want to." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Well then, I'll buy myself a new fishing pole and name it after your father." I finally exhaled. The car was gone. The money partially recovered. The power balance shifted. But I should have known. They weren't done. Not even close. I wish I could say the car sale ended things. That once the check cleared and the title changed hands, my parents retreated into quiet embarrassment, maybe even learned something. But people like them don't self-reflect. They rewrite history. Within days, the whispers started. It began with a cousin texting me, confused. "Hey, did you really threaten to sue your own parents over a couple grand?" "What?" I called him. "No, Kevin. They owed me over 100 grand. Lied about it. Then laughed when I asked for it back." There was a pause. "Yeah, that sounds more like them." By the end of the week, I'd heard from 3 more relatives, each one bringing a new version of the same twisted tale. Apparently, I'd held the car hostage for ransom, made unreasonable demands because I was jealous of Dad's promotion, manipulated Grandpa against them using half-truths. It was surreal, like watching a badly written TV drama, starring my own family, but what really got under my skin was how smug they were about it. I saw photos online, Mom at brunch with a friend, captioned, "Some people value family, others value their egos." Dad at a barbecue, beer in hand, saying, "Can't keep a good man down, no matter how bitter the kids get." It was all aimed at me, passive-aggressive, cowardly, but unmistakably clear. Still, I said nothing. Until I got a call from Natalie. Okay, she said without preamble. What the hell is going on? I filled her in. Every dollar, every lie, every smug dismissal. She was quiet for a long time. Then finally, wow. I always knew they were selfish, but this is next level. I could hear the wheels turning. You should post about it, she said, like, tell your side. I'm not airing my family drama online. I replied. Michael, she said sharply, they already are. Just because they're not tagging you doesn't mean they're not dragging you. That stuck with me, but I didn't do anything, not yet. I wanted to handle this with dignity, to show restraint. I wasn't like them. But Grandpa didn't care about restraint. A week later, he called me. You have 10 minutes to get here, he said. Bring coffee. When I arrived, he was already outside, sipping from his mug like he hadn't just set a mysterious timer. I want to show you something, he said, waving me toward the garage. Inside, under a tarp, was something that made me blink in disbelief. A giant wooden sign, painted in red letters across the front, entitlement is not love. I stared. Is this what I think it is? Pop grinned. You ever been to a block party? Oh no. 2 days later, my parents hosted a summer cookout for the neighborhood, the kind with lawn chairs, paper plates, and overcooked burgers. Pop timed it perfectly. As people gathered in their driveway, he pulled up with the sign strapped to the back of his truck. Didn't say a word. Just parked across the street and sat there. The silence was instant. People stared. Whispers spread. Dad's face went beet red. Mom stormed across the street. What is this? Pop looked up from his paper. Public service announcement. You're humiliating us. No, he said calmly. You did that yourselves. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in years, she had no comeback. They canceled the cookout an hour later. That night, I sat on Pop's porch, watching the sunset, laughing until my stomach hurt. But the joy faded when Natalie called again. They're trying to guilt-trip Grandma now. What? They're telling her you're turning the family against them, that Grandpa's going senile, that you're stealing his money. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. What? They're desperate, she said. Losing control. And they think if they can discredit you, they'll win. That's when I knew this wasn't just petty anymore. It was war. And I was done playing nice. After that last call with Natalie, I stopped hesitating. If my parents wanted war, fine. But they forgot one thing: I wasn't fighting alone. Grandpa was still sharper than anyone gave him credit for, and he'd had enough. I want to fix this while I'm still around. He told me one afternoon, I don't want the last chapter of my life to be about their nonsense. I didn't argue, I just listened. Because he had a plan. First step. A lawyer. Not just any lawyer, one he'd trusted for years. The next time I visited, the papers were ready. His will, updated, his power of attorney, reassigned. And this was the kicker: a notarized letter detailing every dollar my parents had taken from me, signed by Grandpa as witness and validator. They don't get to rewrite history when I'm gone. He said simply. The second step. The family meeting. He scheduled it on a Sunday. Told everyone it was about estate planning, nothing urgent. Just good to get things clear while he was in good health. My parents came, of course, so did aunts, uncles, cousins. The living room was packed. I stood in the back, arms crossed, silent. When everyone had arrived, Grandpa stood. I won't waste your time, he said. This won't take long, but I want to be crystal clear about something. He held up a folder. These, he said, are the final documents outlining where my estate will go. People stirred. My parents stiffened. And just so there are no surprises, he continued. I'll read the relevant parts now. He cleared his throat. To my grandson Michael, who showed integrity, patience, and strength beyond his years. I leave the bulk of my estate house, investments, and personal assets. You could hear the oxygen leave the room. My mother gasped. My father stood, red-faced. To my son Richard and his wife Carol, Grandpa said without flinching, I leave $1 each. Not for lack of love, but for lack of honesty. You betrayed your son's trust and mine. Consider this my final lesson to you. Dead silence. I thought my mother was going to faint. My father started to speak, but Grandpa held up a hand. No interruptions, he said coldly. There's more. He pulled out the notarized letter. This document details the money Michael lent you, $113,000 total, and your admitted misuse of those funds. He looked directly at my parents. You lied. You manipulated. And then you tried to paint him as greedy. A murmur rippled through the room. I won't allow that, Grandpa finished. Not in life, not in death. He folded the paper and set it down. That's all I have to say. And he sat. My father tried to rally. This is a joke, he said. You're choosing him over your own son. But no one responded. Even his siblings, my uncles and aunts, looked away. My mother just stared at the floor. That was the last time we were all in one room. After the meeting, Grandpa pulled me aside. I know this doesn't fix everything, he said, but I hope it gives you some peace. I hugged him. It gives me more than peace. It gives me closure. 2 weeks later, he passed in his sleep. Quiet, peaceful, on his terms. His funeral was small. My parents showed up, of course, but they didn't speak. They sat in the back, like ghosts. Most people avoided them. They were toxic now, and everyone knew it. The will was executed without issue. I inherited the house, the savings, the investments. But more than that, I inherited a legacy of values Grandpa had lived by: honor, fairness, truth. After everything, I didn't keep the money. Well, most of it, yes, but I set aside $10,000 and quietly started a scholarship in Grandpa's name. For kids who had been burned by family, kids who had to grow up fast. It felt right. Natalie helped me set it up. She and I grew closer after everything. Shared a lot of late-night talks, old stories, even tears. You did the right thing, she said one night, even when it cost you. I nodded. Because in the end, I hadn't done it to win. I'd done it to be free. And I blocked my parents on everything. Changed my number, never looked back. The house, I renovated it, then moved in. Not because I needed to, but because it reminded me of Grandpa. His garden, his books, his quiet strength. Sometimes I sit on the porch at sunset and sip coffee, like he used to. And when I see the neighbors wave, I wave back. Because they know, they saw it all, and they know who the real villains were. The paint on my parents' front door eventually faded, but the stain on their reputation, that never did.